In an underground mob garage, the underlings are frantically packing up all the finances, getting ready to move. Meanwhile, the boss in the office looks worried because his nephew stole someone's car and killed that person's dog. To make matters worse, that car is now in his garage. The second in command doesn't understand why the boss is so scared of that person, so the boss reveals that person's name. John Wick's car. But the second in command still isn't convinced. They have plenty of people and ammunition. How could they be afraid of just one guy? The boss then tells him that all the legends and stories about John Wick downplay his abilities. He might just be the most dangerous assassin in the world. Suddenly the phone rings, and when the boss answers, his expression changes. It turns out, John Wick has already arrived. Sure enough, a man in a black suit sneaks into the garage and pulls the cover off a car. Finally, he found his beloved car, a 1969 Ford Mustang Boss 429. John got into the car, caressing it like a long-lost lover. He started the engine, and the Mustang 429 roared to life, its power still impressive. However, the loud engine noise alerted the thugs in the garage, and everyone jumped into their taxis, eager to chase him down. As the Mustang soared out of the warehouse, John didn't notice a few cars coming after, and he was violently hit, turning his once pristine car into a popular move. John, who originally wanted to leave safely with his beloved car, was furious that someone wanted to keep him. He decided not to leave. John swung his car, hitting a thug, but was hit by a taxi as goons charged. John's fists were effective too. On the ground, he took down a thug. Taxi accelerated, and John rolled to avoid. A big guy knocked him down. When everyone thought John was too tired, he pulled a handgun and shot the big guy. The boss, hearing chaos, was terrified. John arrived. On the ground, he subdued a thug. A taxi accelerated towards him, and John rolled away. A big guy charged and knocked him down. John, exhausted, pulled out a handgun and fired 2 shots, hitting the big guy in the knees. The boss was terrified. The office door opened, and John arrived. The boss expected an attack, but John offered a drink. He wanted peace. The boss, realizing John had wiped out his men, couldn't refuse reconciliation. John left. No one survives John Wick unless he spares you. John drove his Mustang home. He retrieved the car for a card and photo from his late wife. At home, a bull terrier ran to him, and he finally felt at ease. The office door swung open and John had arrived. The boss thought this man, nicknamed the Boogeyman, would come at him. But to his surprise, John picked up a bottle from the table and poured 2 glasses of liquor, placing one in front of the boss. It turned out, he wanted to make peace. The boss was taken aback, realizing he had just wiped out all his men. And now John was asking for reconciliation, a request he simply couldn't refuse. After finishing his drink, John turned to leave, and the boss could only sit there, frozen, watching him walk away. No one survives John Wick unless he doesn't want to kill you. John drove his battered Mustang slowly back home. The reason he went through all that trouble to get the car back was that there was a card and a photo from his late wife hidden in the glove compartment, and this car was a gift from her. When John entered his home, a bull terrier ran up to him. Seeing the dog, he finally felt he could let down all his defenses and burdens. John returned to his quiet and lonely retirement life. He went down to the basement, where an open box sat. This was where he had broken through the floor to retrieve his long-sealed gear in order to get his beloved car back. Now, he was putting the used guns back into the box. He had covered the box with cement again, thinking he would never have to deal with those things anymore. Just then, the doorbell rang. John opened the door to find a man he recognized but didn't want to see. Behind him stood several bodyguards, indicating he was a big deal. He welcomed the man named Santino into his home. While making coffee for his guest, John felt heavy-hearted, sensing that something bad was about to happen. Sure enough, as they sat facing each other, Santino pulled out a silver medallion from his pocket. It was a blood oath, marked with a bloody handprint, and that blood belonged to John. The medallion was a contract. John sought Santino's help to retire from being an assassin, signing a blood oath. If Santino needed help, John had to comply. John knew Santino's request would involve killing, so he refused. Frustrated, Santino left, but, as a mob boss, felt entitled to destroy John's mansion, which existed due to his help. He used a grenade launcher, destroying the mansion with 4 shots. John watched the fire, losing his home. The police arrived, suspecting John's return to crime. John left silently with his dog, heading to the Continental Hotel. Seeing that he couldn't persuade John, Santino had no choice but to leave in frustration. But as a mob boss, he couldn't just be dismissed with a few words. Since John's mansion existed because of his health, he felt entitled to destroy it now. Santino pulled an Alvin 37 grenade launcher from the trunk of his car. This was a powerful weapon, and with just 1 shot, it sent John flying out of the house. Santino fired 3 more shots, watching as the entire mansion was engulfed in flames before he finally stopped. John lay on the ground, watching the raging flames. This time, he had lost his home as well. Perhaps this is the fate of an assassin. The police and fire department arrived. A familiar police officer, seeing the chaos, suspected that John had returned to his old ways, but John didn't answer him. Instead, he left with his dog, and maybe that was John's answer. Just him and his dog, walking on foot to the Continental Hotel. John left his dog at the front desk while he went to find the manager of the Continental Hotel, Winston. The little dog obediently stayed put, watching the lobby manager intently, making him a bit uneasy. The Continental Hotel is a safe haven for assassins, and its manager, Winston, is like a walking encyclopedia of the dark underworld in New York. As an old friend, John wanted to ask Winston where he could find Santino. Winston certainly understood what John was thinking. He felt that John was retired. Shu had lived in this world for too long, and had almost forgotten the 2 iron rules of the dark world. The first rule was that you could not kill people in a mainland hotel. The second blood badge must be responded to. If any of the iron rules are violated, they will be severely punished by the High Table, the ruling class of the dark world. So Winston advises John to meet Santino's demands first, then deal with him after. John only worries about his dog. He leaves the dog and walks away. John follows Winston's address to the museum. Santino, a big boss, has many bodyguards. John undergoes a check by a female guard. He's allowed through after confirming no weapons. Santino admires the family treasure, the Battle of Custoza. Santino knew John was coming. John skips small talk and asks who to kill. Santino surprises John by asking him to kill his sister Gianna. After confirming that he was not carrying any weapons, he was allowed to pass. Santino was admiring the famous Italian painting, Battle of Custoza, which was a collection of his family. Santino seemed to have known that John was coming back. John was tasked by Santino to kill his sister Gianna, who led the Camorra family at the high table. Santino wanted her seat. John agreed, retrieved his gear, and prepared to return to the underworld. It turns out that Santino and his sister belonged to the oldest Italian mafia family, the Camorra family, which holds one of the 12 seats at the high table. Before Santino's father passed away, he passed the seat to his sister Gianna. So now the entire Camorra family is managed by Gianna. Santino, of course, is resentful and wants to take her place. So he sends John to deal with his sister. He tells John that once this is done, the blood oath will officially end. John silently turns and walks away, and Santino knows he has agreed. After the house was destroyed, all of John's belongings were gone. He went to a bank in the Jewish district, where he had previously stored a suitcase. Inside the suitcase was a complete set of backup suits, and hidden in a secret compartment were 2 large stacks of gold coins and a handgun. Thinking about being forced to become a hitman again, he let out a roar of frustration in the secret room. When he put on the black suit again, everyone knew he had returned to the underworld. John traveled all the way to Italy, checking into the Continental Hotel in Rome. The hotel manager is an old friend of John's, who provided him with the best room for free, and all the hotel facilities were open to him at no charge. So, John sought out the sommelier at the hotel. Besides wine tasting, another part of his job is to help hitmen select suitable weapons. Knowing John's taste, the sommelier picked out the appetizer, a Glock 34, and a Glock 26 handguns for him to enjoy. The death gun is equipped with a trumpet-shaped magazine, which makes it easier to load bullets. The next dish is the AR-15 automatic rifle, which has been modified by the sommelier to be more powerful and accurate. The final dish is the Bonelli M4 Super 90 shotgun, with a retractable stock, equipped with a rail interface system, and 12 caliber ammunition, which is a great dish that makes people linger. Wasn't satisfied. He ordered magical knives. Planning big, he left the sommelier and went to a tailor for a combat suit with armor. At night, he reached Gianna's mansion via a passage, hiding weapons. Gianna, the new Camorra queen, hosted a party. She seemed gentle but was tough, handling opposition. After freshening up, John appeared behind her. Surprised, she saw his gun. John revealed her brother Santino's betrayal. She knew this day would come, just not so soon. John sneaks into Gianna's mansion, hiding weapons. Gianna, new queen of Camorra, hosts a party. She seems gentle, but is tough, handling opposition easily. In the bathroom, John appears behind her. Gianna is surprised by John's gun, but understands when he reveals Santino's betrayal. She expected sibling rivalry, but not so soon. Gianna disrobes, cuts her wrist with a hairpin, choosing to die with dignity. Before dying, she warns John of Santino's greater ambition, hinting at New York. John takes her hand. Then, a person returned to the bathroom to freshen up and touch up their makeup. As they looked in the mirror, John appeared behind them like a ghost in the night, silently. Gianna, who was once a friend, was a bit surprised to see the gun in John's hand. But when she learned from John that the one who wanted to kill her was her brother Santino, she felt a sense of relief. Siblings killing each other over the throne. Perhaps she had long understood that this day would come, but she never expected it to arrive so soon. Gianna offered no resistance at all. Instead, she stripped off her clothes in front of John. As she stepped into the bath, she didn't let John do the deed. Instead, she used a sharp hairpin to make a deep cut on her wrist. She was a woman of dignity, choosing to die on her own terms. Before she died, she told John that Santino's ambition was much greater than hers. If her brother took power, perhaps his next target would be to conquer New York. John walked over and took Gianna's hand. John, a hitman, finished his job. At the party, Cassian recognized him. Both fired. They hit, but wore vests. John ran. Cassian ordered a chase. John dashed into the dance floor. Bodyguards rushed. John shot precisely, hitting enemies, not bystanders. He reloaded and fought. As an assassin, he was in his element. The two men drew their guns and fired at the same time. Although they both hit each other, they were wearing bulletproof vests. John didn't want to get caught up in a prolonged fight, so he got up and ran. Cassian ordered everyone to chase after him while he hurried back to check the situation inside. John dashed into the crowded dance floor, where countless bodyguards, alerted by the message, rushed at him from all directions. In the packed dance floor, John raised his gun and shot at close range. His aim precise, hitting every enemy without harming any innocent bystander. He ran to a corner to reload and continued to fight back. As a top killer with extremely rich work experience, John consistently uses the Mozambique drill to take down his enemy. The first shot always hits the chest, and the second shot is aimed at the head. After a tough escape, John finally reaches the secret passage he had planned. Just when he thinks there are no more enemies around, he finds something waiting for him at the end of the passage. A person suddenly appeared, and it turned out to be Santino's personal female bodyguard. Several gunmen suddenly emerged from both sides, shooting at John, but all the bullets were blocked by John's bulletproof suit. It turns out that after Santino sent John to kill his sister, he immediately had people ambush him here. He wanted to silence John to eliminate future threats. John sprinted desperately down the corridor, and when his handgun ran out of bullets, he pulled out the AR-15 assault rifle he had hidden in the kill. It seems that he had already expected that the sinister villain Santino would have this kid. There is a reason why John could survive so long in the bloody storm. Santino has sent many enemies, aiming for John's death, but John's modified AR-15 with high-capacity magazines makes him a deadly force. In the dim corridor, he fiercely fights, taking down foes. When the AR-15 is empty, John uses his trump card, a 4-barrel shotgun, unleashing a barrage. The shotgun needs reloading after 2 shots, but each shot impact is striking, with blood mixed everywhere. John kills his pursuers and escapes. In a quiet alley, a car suddenly hits him. It's Cassian, avenging his boss's death. Fury. Cassian attacks John. Both out of bullets, they fight hand to hand. John meets his match. Cassian blocks all attacks and dodges bullets. They fight desperately, crashing through glass to a building. John kills his pursuers and escapes. In a city alley, a car hits him. It's Cassian, angry because John killed his boss. They fight hand to hand, both out of bullets. John meets his match. Cassian blocks his attacks and dodges bullets. They crash into a building but are stopped by someone. They've entered the Continental Hotel in Rome, where fighting is banned. The manager calms them at the bar. Cassian learns Santino forced John to kill Gianna with a blood oath. Despite John's reasons, Cassian feels different about Gianna. The two men fought, broke, the glass fell into a house, but they were suddenly stopped. They had accidentally entered the Continental Hotel in Rome, where fighting is prohibited. The manager asked them to calm down at the bar, and they ordered drinks. Cassian learned from John that Santino forced John to kill Gianna using a blood oath. Despite John's reasons, Cassian felt differently about Gianna and sought revenge. He offered John a gold coin, symbolizing their severed friendship. Next time, it would be a fight to the death. As Cassian left, Santino called John, but John hung up. Santino, shocked, knew this meant danger. Fearing John's skills, he quickly issued a bounty. He must avenge Gianna. He pulls out a gold coin. Their friendship is over. Next time they meet, it's a fight to the death. Cassian leaves. John's phone rings. It's Santino. Santino, seeing his plan failed, tries to explain, but John hangs up. Santino is shocked. Everyone knows being hung up on by John means danger. Santino is scared, having seen John's combat skills. He quickly calls to issue a bounty. The bounty is a high table right in the underworld, and members can pay the fee. Santino stood frozen in place, because everyone who knows John understands that being hung up on by him means your life is in danger. Santino was scared. He had just witnessed this man's terrifying combat skills. So he quickly made another call to issue a bounty. The bounty order is the right of the high table in the dark world, and the 12-seated people can pay the corresponding fees. A global bounty can be issued, and it seems Santino is genuinely afraid of this man known as the Boogeyman, with the bounty amount reaching 7 million. In the next moment, all assassins around the world receive a bounty notification on their phones, and the target is none other than John Wick. John returns to New York, walking through a bustling commercial street, when suddenly, a street performer playing the violin pulls out a handgun and shoots at him. If it weren't for John's bulletproof vest, he would have been dead by now, but he still gets hit in the waist. After dealing with a female assassin, John stumbled into a crowded area, where a man began to follow him. Seeing someone checking their phone, John realized they were all assassins. So he took the initiative and rushed up to confront the guy. John picked up his signature weapon, a pencil, and brutally took down 2 enemies in a bloody fashion. He eliminated wave after wave of foes, and ran into a bustling square, suddenly slowing down to a walk because he sensed a stronger presence nearby. Sure enough, Cassian appeared near the fountain, a formidable opponent, whose strength matched his own. At the moment the fountain erupted, both of them struck simultaneously. Taking advantage of the chaos, John rushed into the subway station, blending into the moving crowd. Cassian spotted him from the platform above, and the two of them, one above and one below, aimed their silenced handguns at each other, while the pedestrians around them remained oblivious to the danger just beside them. When the train arrived, both of them boarded the same car. With so many passengers on board, neither of them made a move. It was a brief moment of respite before the final showdown. As the subway train arrived and the passengers got off, both men silently drew their knives. They struck simultaneously, locking their blades against each other. Cassian thrust his knife into John's thigh, with force, and they engaged in a life-and-death struggle. Cassian knocked the knife out of John's hand. After several intense exchanges, John managed to twist Cassian's wrist and drive the knife deep into his chest. John then placed Cassian on a seat, pulled out the knife, and Cassian was moments away from death. In this battle, John emerged victorious. He continued to flee, battered and exhausted. At that moment, he spotted 2 janitors standing across from him. Seeing that he was too weak to fight anymore, John could only turn and run. He made his way to a rundown subway station, where he found a homeless man by the iron bars. He tossed a gold coin into the man's begging cup, and asked him to take him to a certain person. After saying that, he sat down next to the homeless man, and told him his name. The homeless man quickly pulled off a dirty plastic sheet, and covered John with it. At that moment, 2 cleaning crew assassins had already chased after him. Just as they reached the homeless man, he sprang into action. Soon after, 2 burly men quietly approached to dispose of the bodies, indicating that John had found the right person. When John woke up again, he found that his body had mostly healed, and the gunshot wound on his waist was nicely bandaged. He was taken to a balcony filled with various homing pigeons. A cheerful, chubby black man greeted him with a smile. It turns out this person is... The man's name is Boken, and he is the underground king of New York City. He is in charge of all subways, train stations, sewers, and the old city. Bowery King isn't truly John's friend. As John scarred his neck years ago, Bowery King assumed John sought help due to the 7 million bounty known in the dark world. Surprisingly, John offered help instead. Bowery King laughed angrily and showed John his weapon-filled basement. Puzzled by John's offer, John warned of an impending catastrophe. If Santino joined the high table, he'd extend his influence over New York, affecting Bowery King's territory. John promised to handle Santino if Bowery King assisted, but John told him that a catastrophe was about to unfold. If Santino were to take a seat at the high table, he would immediately extend his influence over New York, and soon every corner of the city would have its own account. Bowery King's territory would also be affected. However, if Bowery King could help, John would take care of Santino and resolve the issue once and for all. So, John presented Bowery King with a choice, and Bowery King's territory would also suffer. But if Bowery King could help, John would take care of Santino and resolve the issue once and for all. So John threw a choice at Bowery King. Choice. You want a war? Or do you just want to give me a gun? He laughed and shouted it out loud. Somebody please get this man a gun. Somebody please get this man a gun. Somebody. John knew that the cooperation was done. Bowery King really did provide him with a Kimber 1911 handgun, but he only gave him 7 bullets, which perfectly matched the 7 million bounty on his head. It was undoubtedly a joke with his life, but John still picked up the gun because having something was better than nothing. Bowery King had his assistant take him through a back route to where Santino was, and at that moment, Santino was at the museum throwing a big party, celebrating his rise to power just like his sister did. John arrived at the museum through the underground passage. Santino, who was chatting with guests, suddenly spotted John. He didn't expect death to come knocking so soon, and the two of them just stared at each other, frozen in place. The guests, sensing the unusual atmosphere, began to scatter. John quickly fired all 7 bullets. With no other choice, he snatched a handgun from one of the goons and went after Santino. In the museum, John went on a rampage, shooting and chasing, taking out enemies as he ran, and swapping in new magazines whenever he ran out of bullets. John chased to the second floor of the museum, where Santino was hiding. He finally found Santino among a pile of reflectors. Santino also had a strong desire to survive, so he quickly broke through the glass wall to avoid John's shooting. John also ran out of bullets and missed the opportunity. At this moment, the female bodyguard arrived with a security team, all heavily armed with M4A1 assault rifles. Even so, unarmed John got up close and personal, taking down enemies by snatching their handguns. Meanwhile, the female bodyguard had found Santino, and was escorting him to the elevator to get him out. Santino pulled out the gun he had left behind, ready to confront John. But with his arrogant demeanor, it was hard to believe he could stand up to the boogeyman. In just a few moves, John disarmed him, ripping through his palm, and then plunging the knife deep into his chest. After dealing with the female bodyguard, John didn't rush to leave. Instead, he searched her body and found a handgun, reloaded it, and then made his exit. At this moment, with nowhere to run, Santino fled to the Continental Hotel, where he found Winston. This was his last refuge, because no one could be killed inside the Continental. John also arrived at the Continental, walking up to Santino with his handgun. Santino pretended to be calm, eating dinner, and even made light jokes, but inside he was terrified. Winston, standing nearby, kept urging John to stay calm, but the next second, I tell you, yes, John didn't care about any rules. He swiftly killed Santino. For him, life is all about settling scores quickly. John picked up his puppy from the front desk and took him back to that cold, broken home. It was icy rain. John dug out his wife's necklace from the mud and sat on the tattered sofa. At this moment, he finally found inner peace. But not long after, Yin's voice broke this rare tranquility. It turned out that Black, the front desk manager of the Continental Hotel, had arrived. John knew that what was coming would eventually come, and he was taken to the park, where Winston had been waiting for him. The railroad tracks of the Continental Hotel could not be violated by anyone. If you make a mistake, you must face the consequences. Winston told John that the high table had doubled the bounty on Santino, and now no one could save him. As the head of the Continental, Winston had the absolute power to take John out in an instant. But as an old friend, he didn't do that. Instead, he left John a glimmer of hope. He gave John an hour to escape, and returned Santino's blood badge to him. This thing might come in handy later. After saying goodbye to each other, John set off on the run once again. The bounty, now reaching a staggering 100 million, was sent out to everyone in the dark world, targeting that legendary man. If you see a man in a suit running with a dog, please do not try to stop him, because he is John Wick.